Reinvention. It's often sought after by storytellers because of its inherent ability to call back to something familiar while presenting it, hopefully, in an all-new light. It's not easy, but when it's approached with dedication, care, and craftsmanship, reinvention can be a powerful, effective method to make our old standbys seem as new as they were when they first came along. God of War, the fourth primary entry in the video game series, started in 2005, and the eighth in the series overall, is one of the best, most positive examples of reinvention that has come along in the interactive medium of video games in a good long while. Maintaining only narrative and character continuity from the previous entries in the series, every other aspect of this new experience, from the game mechanics, level design, and even its very setting, are all entirely different from the previous games featuring Kratos. What is it exactly about God of War that is so satisfying as an enthralling video game, a story about a father and son, and the next chapter in the life of a beloved character? Let's step into the realms connected by Yggdrasil and try to discover the answer to exactly that question. One thing that becomes immediately apparent when first starting the game up is that developer Santa Monica Studio put a great deal of time, attention, and effort into the graphical look of the game, resulting in the most visually impressive title to hit the PlayStation 4 in the system's 4.5-year history. Sony has been no stranger to pushing the limit of graphical fidelity on their exclusive offerings, with entries like Uncharted 4 and Horizon Zero Dawn coming to mind, but God of War takes the lessons and standards established by those games to totally new heights. That makes this one the game to beat when it comes to showing off the technical capabilities of the PS4 platform itself. On the base model, the game runs at a solid 1080p resolution at 30 frames per second. On the PS4 Pro, it runs at checkerboarded 4K with HDR support, and the realistic physics and more advanced lighting system all combine to help give the bombastic, sweeping environments of God of War the most impressive graphical presentation on the system today, particularly if you're playing on the beefier Pro model. Sound-wise, the game features a score that feels highly reflexive as to what's happening on the screen. From the literally earth-shattering battles on down to the quiet moments of solemn reflection from Kratos, Atreus, and other characters, the musical score, as composed by Bear McCreary, feels like a beautifully designed accompaniment to both the story and action as it plays out. Sound design for the other aspects of the game world, from the crunching of snow beneath your feet, to the cracking of trees, down to the whoosh of the Leviathan axe, and of course the booming baritone of the World Serpent, all add significantly to the grand scale employed in every aspect of the game's design. Every single component of the visual and sound design demands praise because of the clear dedication to craft exhibited by all the people responsible for their pivotal roles to play in making God of War look and sound better than, perhaps, any other modern game on the market today. While people are right in saying that God of War is a notable departure from the norms of the series, it's most definitely not anything even remotely resembling a reboot when looking solely at the game's story. Yes, the setting is drastically different, as are many of the supporting characters and situations you're forced to encounter while playing, but the one element that anchors this game into the previous events and lore that define the originals is the guy placed at the center of everything across them all: Kratos. The primary difference in the story here is in its tone. Gone is the more bombastic, balls-to-the-wall, roided-out masculine rage from the original game, and in its place is a god struggling to keep his smoldering anger, and the power that comes with it, under control. Over the course of this game, Kratos, privately but knowingly, reflects on his past actions, and is apparently hid in the forests of Midgard in an attempt to quietly escape his past as the slayer of the gods on Mount Olympus. Many years later, Kratos has a new family in the form of Faye, his wife, and their son Atreus. It seems as though he's managed to go undetected by the gods of Asgard, namely Odin, the Allfather. Unfortunately though, as we begin the game, tragedy has befallen the small family, and Faye has died. Worried about the prospect of raising his son alone, but determined to honor Faye's wishes, Kratos and Atreus create a pyre for her and prepare to collect her ashes to take them to the top of the tall mountain in the distance. On their long journey, Kratos will have to teach his son not only how to fend for himself, but will also have to break through the caring, softer exterior of Atreus in order to teach him how to close his heart to a necessary act of survival that Kratos is all too familiar with: inflicting death. Things are further complicated when an early encounter in the game makes clear that Kratos has, in fact, been compromised. The gods of Asgard now know that he resides within their realms. Staying one step ahead of them in order for he and Atreus to accomplish their final task for Faye will now be far more complicated. Even if Kratos isn't happy about it, the gods' awareness of his true nature now means the task is something he and Atreus can't accomplish on their own. As for Atreus himself, Kratos' son is the player's true emotional entry point in the story. While Kratos makes for an engaging and powerful player character, he's not exactly the most emotionally honest guy in the game, only letting his stone-faced visage crack when he has a moment to himself after he realizes that the Norse gods have discovered he's in Midgard. Picking up that baton of blunt and refreshing emotional honesty is Atreus, whose insight into the myths of Asgard and Midgard and earnest curiosity about the worlds around him helps to make you feel a sense of parental protection for him as you pave the way on the journey. The story on display here feels like an epic of old in both presentation and execution, with the emotional moments often quickly punctuated by some thunderous battle or a shocking revelation. This is a tale that deserves to be told on as grand a canvas as possible, and Santa Monica Studio brings every element, visuals, sounds, writing, and performances, to bear to deliver on the promise that is the story to God of War. While this game has story ties to the previous entries in the series, its most pivotal element, gameplay, makes clear that it's an entirely different beast altogether. While the original games were far more simplistic hack-and-slash action games operating off of a largely fixed camera position, 2018's God of War is almost as if The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild had a baby with Dark Souls. You have to be very present as you play through the game in order to be conscious of currency and elemental pickups, how to best optimize your resources and artifacts in order to turn them into tangible upgrades for skills and materials, and keeping an eye out for quick puzzles that could lead to some pretty consequential legendary items you can find along your journey. The combat has also been completely redesigned, with greater attention being paid to adding greater depth. God of War's combat system requires a great deal of spatial awareness and a finely tuned repertoire of moves you can pull off both with the weapon at your side, which for most of the experience is your Leviathan axe, as well as in hand-to-hand combat. Although combat works differently from before, this game most certainly doesn't skimp when it comes to a similar portrayal of Kratos' brutality when dispatching his foes. The addition of Atreus as a support character adds even more depth. He starts off with the ability to fire his arrows in order to both stun and distract the enemies you're currently taking on, while later you can upgrade his gear and even his combat moves so that he can become a true force to be reckoned with, getting involved by jumping on enemies' backs and letting loose a volley of more powerful projectiles to become a notable difference maker in some of the later battles. Do not overlook upgrades for Atreus. In specific moments, he can very easily be the difference between life and death for Kratos. All in all, the gameplay element of God of War constitutes the biggest, most visible, and fundamental reimagination of the entire series, and the whole affair is far better for it. There is a lot to chew on here, and chances are you'll love every minute of it. God of War is easily the most standout game experience of 2018 so far, and the best that the game series featuring Kratos has ever produced. Its desire to maintain continuity with previous games on the story front, while completely changing the way the game mechanics work, is a solid move, giving an in to series veterans, while also being extraordinarily friendly to new players. Because of the perfect storm of factors that make this a truly memorable and surprisingly powerful game from the perspective of both seeing the story play out and pounding through dark elves, trolls, and other Norse adversaries, we have no choice but to bow to its greatness. It may not be perfect, but for our money, God of War comes surprisingly close. For more on God of War, as well as an in-depth written review of this game, be sure to check out geeksandgamers.com.